worship another Christ. The emphasis of this protection is to keep us from worshiping the Antichrist. After the immediate resurrection of Christ, a very short time after his resurrection, many false Christs began to appear. But our times also show the appearance of many false Christs. We see much parallelism between that time, almost 2,000 years ago, and our times. We have very many false Christs today who proclaim that they are the Messiah, suggesting that they will save humanity. Christ said, then they will tell you, here's Christ, there's Christ, he's in his homes, in this room, or he's out in a desert. Do not go out to him, do not run to him. Christ came already, and he will come again from heaven. He will not set foot in a desert or in homes or here or there or on earth. So this seal, and here I would really like you to pay attention, this sealing takes on a specific character according to the circumstance and time. Initially, we have a prophetic seal in the book of prophet Ezekiel, which took place in the years of the Babylonian captivity. And there we will clearly see that this seal was in the form of the uncreated energy of the Holy Cross. This was before Christ, and by the uncreated energy of the Holy Cross. Again, this before Christ, those who did not fall into the sin of idolatry were saved, and we will see how the prophet tells us this. After this, we have a historical seal. First, we had the prophetic seal, and this prophecy became reality shortly thereafter. The prophet simply refers to the seal, and we can see how it is carried out mystically, secretly that is, and not visibly. That's why I named it prophetic. Actually, they are prophetic. Afterwards, we have another seal, prophetic, to start with, but it materialized, and this is the destruction of Jerusalem from Vespasian and his son Titus at 70 A.D. This second seal, which took place in Jerusalem during that time, had this specific form. And please pay attention, because this subject is of interest to us and our future. And this seal takes place constantly. Pay attention to this. Christ, shortly before his passion on the cross, spoke about the destruction of Jerusalem. He clearly said that the destruction of Jerusalem would be the consequence of the God-killing Jews of that time. They grabbed their God and killed him. This city needed to be punished. These people had to be punished very harshly. They passed this judgment on themselves in many ways. And they did this when they said to Pilate, his blood on our heads and on our children's heads. When they were asked by the Lord after the parable of the evil farmers, tell me, these evil farmers who abused the representatives of the landowner, and at the end he sent his son thinking they will respect my son, and they said, let us kill the son so we can be the heirs of the land. Tell me, what would the landowner do to them when he comes back? And they answered, he will destroy these evildoers in a very evil way. Christ did not say this. His listeners gave this response. The Pharisees and the scribes. These evil ones he will destroy in a very bad way. The Lord at another gathering said, the stone that was rejected by the builders became the headstone. The leaders of the people reject what God wants to institute. When they heard the result of this rejection and how this stone would fall on them and crush them, do you know what they said? Mi genito, may this never be. When the Lord said God will take the blessing away and give it to another nation which will produce its fruit, the Jews who were listening said again, may this never be. Therefore, as we see, the Lord forewarned them, but they did not believe. So these people needed to be punished as a result of their unbelief and apostasy. But many people believed. Was it just and righteous to punish those who believed? They needed to receive a sign, a seal, to seal them from the unbelievers, to save them from the coming destruction. So when the dreadful destruction would be at hand, which, by the way, serves as a typology of the destruction of the world, the destruction of Jerusalem of 70 AD serves as a typos, as a typology of the end of times. Christ himself said how his own people would be protected. He placed a seal. Listen to the kind of seal. It's in these words: when you see the abomination of desolation, and so on and so forth, the one who reads, let him understand. This phrase, the one who reads, let him understand, is added by the evangelist Matthew. So when you see the abomination of desolation, as foretold by Daniel the prophet, to stand on a holy place, the abomination of desolation is the desecration, the pollution, and the desertion of the temple of Solomon, from the desertion of the Jews and the archons and the archpriests and the priests. On the one hand, and on the other hand, it would be used for a place of idol worship by the Romans, the conquerors. He says he will stand at the holy place, this abomination of desolation. He does not say the temple. Why? Because whoever reads these things, let him understand. This is a cryptogram or a coded message. The word temple does not exist, or anything else for that matter, but only the prophecy of Daniel, which would be fulfilled, and it was fulfilled at 70 AD. Daniel even prophesied the time of this prophecy, the time of the fulfillment of this prophecy, and this is why the Lord now uses this prophecy, and he continues to say, then when you see this, those who are in Judea run to the mountains. Not those in Jerusalem only, but the entire Judea, the county of Jerusalem, let's say, all those take off to the mountains, flee to the mountains. Let him who's on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. The roofs of those homes in the east were used as sun decks. The rooftop was flat, and most people would place their fruits there to dry for the winter. Sesame, raisins, almonds, all these fruits would be spread all over the roof to be sun-dried. This takes place in the fields as well, but most people would use their rooftops for this purpose. So the Christian homeowner happens to be on his rooftop, and he's turning the raisins so the underside can be baked by the sun. There he suddenly sees from his rooftop the approaching of armies, the approaching of many soldiers ready for battle. He does not say what kind of army. Then let the one on the rooftop come down from his roof, but do not go inside the house to take anything. This is very natural for someone to want to go inside the house to take his valuables, his money, some necessities. No, let him not go inside. Do not take anything. But once he comes down, let him run to the gate of the city walls and run out of the gate, exit the city, and let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. The one who is working in his farm has his old clothes on, he has work clothes. So when he sees the army surrounding Jerusalem, then do not go in the city for a change of clothes. He will not have enough time. It is common knowledge that when a city was under an enemy attack, the first thing to do was to close the city gates. And when the gates of the city would close, no one would be able to exit or enter. Consequently, the faithful shouldn't find themselves inside the walls of Jerusalem. When the time drew near, almost 40 years after the Lord spoke these words, the Christians were keeping these forewarnings of the Lord very fresh in their minds. They were actively teaching this to the church members. Then when the time came, they received a special illumination. I'm saying a special illumination because they could not possibly have time to warn each other. The Lord here speaks rather literally. You will not have enough time if you go inside the house. You will end up panicking and you will end up staying inside the house and inside the walls. So how could the faithful warn each other? There was no possible time for this. Each one had to act on their own. There was no room here to go warn and to be warned. So the faithful, according to St. James, were in the tens of thousands. He tells this to St. Paul in the Acts of the Apostles. Not that all these tens of thousands were, inside the city, but in the county as well, in the country. Because the Lord did not only speak about the city, but the countryside also. Then all those, when they saw the Romans coming to destroy Jerusalem as organs of divine justice, all the Christians, my friends, were gone. And someone could absorb this phenomenon. Those who did not believe in Christ and his church, they were leaving the countryside to seek refuge inside the walls of Jerusalem. On the contrary, the Christians were abandoning the city and they were running out to the country, out to the mountains. And historically speaking, the destruction of Jerusalem is unprecedented. This destruction serves as typology of the end of times, a foreshadow of the awful last days. What a horrible ordeal. Mothers ate their own children from being starved, and when Titus entered the city and slain the Jews, it is said that there was no more lumber available to crucify any more people. It is also recorded by the historian Josephus that the earth was saturated with so much blood that for many years it had no need for fertilization or manure. It is said that at least 100,000 of these Jews were sold as slaves in the slave markets of that era. The destruction was unprecedented. The Christians were not inside the walls. They were spared. Those who persisted in their unbelief were punished severely, and they received all the curse of the blood of Christ, which befell upon them. And this was the seal given by Christ. Now we have a third seal. This is the seal that will take place at the very end. What will be the seal of the end of times? How will it take place? We could basically say that only God knows. However, we can offer some thoughts. As we said, only God knows the form of that final seal and its specifics, but we could generally say that the purpose of that seal will not result in the avoidance of the evils of that time, but to recognize the delusion, because everyone will be deluded and will be worshiping the Antichrist as the Messiah. He will be an extraordinary man. Listen, he will be a philanthropist, clever. He will unite the entire earth under one government, thus eliminating wars. He will be an amazing individual. This is why people will never imagine him to be the Antichrist. However, after he gains control of the earth in the first 3.5 years, then he will begin to expose his real self, and he will prove to be the ultra-diabolical men, the men who will be 100% in the service of the devil, the ultimate organ of the devil, but up to the point where he actually reveals himself, people would already have worshipped him. The faithful must not worship him, which means that they must recognize something. Now, who will help them to recognize that this amazing leader is the Antichrist? Of course, outside of this ability to recognize, the two prophets, Elijah and Enoch, will also be present. These two did not taste death. They will return and they will be hanged and they will be executed by hanging in the holy city of Jerusalem, as the book of the Apocalypse specifies to us. These prophets will point out the identity of the Antichrist. However, even though this will be of great importance and, of course, a necessity, the faithful who have the Spirit of God will be able to